5 hauntingly sinister school lockdown stories revealed, terrifying incidents you won't forget. The town of Maplewood had always felt safe until now. Blood-chilling whispers echoed through the community about eerie lockdown drills and impending dangers. 5 horrifying incidents you can't shake, the local news anchor grimly reported. Faces that once beamed with joy now cast anxious shadows. Every parent held their child a little closer, every door was locked tight, and the streets felt like a trap. Rachel stood in her small kitchen, slicing vegetables and trying to whip up a comforting meatloaf. The smell was meant to soothe, but instead, the aroma twisted in the air, suffocating her with fear. Just earlier, the school had announced a surprise lockdown drill. To reassure parents, the principal said. A drill? It felt like a bad joke. But as she cut through the onion, the radio crackled ominously. Reports of a masked figure seen near Maplewood Middle School. The words hung in the air, eerie and cold. She grabbed her phone, fingers trembling as she dialed Ethan's number, heart racing. No answer. Panic surged. Ethan! She cried, voice thick with dread. The once familiar suburban streets outside felt alien, a tapestry of shadows dancing in the dusk. Sirens wailed in the distance, and the chatter of worried parents came flooding through her phone. Neighbors, once friendly faces, now seemed shrouded in something sinister, lurking and whispering behind closed curtains. Just as darkness fell, Rachel's world shattered. Ethan was missing. The school was locked down, and fear wrapped around her like a vice. Not knowing where to turn, she steeled herself, plunging into the enveloping shadows. The streets felt haunted, fluorescent lights flickering like the last heartbeat of hope. Each step echoed in her ears, as the scent of fear clung to the night. She walked cautiously, dread pooling in her stomach. What if he needed me? She thought. What if I'm too late? The neighborhood, once a safe haven, turned nightmarish in her mind. Flickering tail lights morphing into eyes watching her every move. Suddenly, Rachel heard muffled cries. Instinct kicked in. She rushed towards the sound but was met by frantic whispers from her neighbors. Kids peered through windows, eyes wide with terror. Everything felt wrong. The comforting aura of community began to unravel, revealing a darker truth. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Rachel shook her head, forcing herself back to reality, to Ethan. As she pressed further into the night, glimpses of red paint on the sidewalk caught her eye, shattered pieces of childhood innocence strewn like confetti. The doors of trust had swung wide open, each unsettling encounter sent chills down her spine. Just as she began connecting the dots, she felt a presence, lurking just out of sight. Feeling vulnerable, she braced herself as the air thickened with tension. And then, a sudden gunshot shattered the night, sharp, deafening. It echoed, much like the fear thrumming through her veins. Rachel's breath hitched. The masked figure was more than a shadow now, but a terrifying embodiment of every mother's worst nightmare. In that heartbeat, time slowed, leaving dread hanging in the air like a storm brewing on the horizon. Rachel hit the ground, heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. The gunshot reverberated in her ears, pulling her deeper into the shadows. Was it a warning? A threat? She crawled behind a bush, its leaves soaking up her fear, praying she wouldn't be seen. Her mind raced. Where was Ethan? The voices were muffled now, but she strained to listen. Get inside. Lock the doors. A neighbor's frantic command pierced through the chaos. Rachel peered around the bush, catching glimpses of her neighbors huddled, their faces drawn tight with panic. A deep chill burrowed into her bones. The neighborhood had transformed into a war zone overnight, with sirens wailing and the threat of violence looming over them like a storm cloud. The air turned thick with despair, and Rachel couldn't shake off the feeling that something unspeakable was about to happen. She pulled out her phone, desperate to call for help, the screen glowing like a beacon in the dark. But there was no signal. Panic struck her. What good was technology when it betrayed her in this moment of need? "Ethan. Please, where are you?" she whispered into the dark. As seconds dragged agonizingly into minutes, Rachel pressed her back against the cold ground, her body trembling. She could hear a rustle in the distance. It sounded like footsteps crunching gravel. Every sense heightened, she held her breath, wondering if the masked figure would emerge if he was closing in. Suddenly, the bodies around her shifted, and the next voice made her stomach turn. "They said there's someone out there." They heard him, the boy. The others gasped, a sick silence falling. A boy? Did they mean Ethan? Rachel felt a wave of nausea wash over her. Her mind flashed with images of her son, the way he laughed, the way he teased the cat, the soft way he called out to her. Was he in trouble? Alone somewhere in the night? But then, through the whispers and muffled cries, a shrill scream echoed. It shattered the tension, clutching at her heart. "Mom!" A child's voice broke, sending shockwaves through Rachel's spine, igniting a fire of determination. It was Ethan. Without thinking, she bolted from her hiding place, sprinting towards the sound just as another shot rang out, thudding heavy in the air, deafening her instincts. The masked figure was real, and the danger tangible. She ducked and weaved through the chaotic streets, each house a potential refuge, each step reminding her of the stakes stacked against her. "Ethan!" she screamed, her voice raw. "Ethan!" She raced past houses, peering through darkened windows, searching. But all she saw was darkness, shadows flickering like dying candles. Then she noticed a flicker of movement near the school. Could it be? Rachel's heart raced, adrenaline pumping through her veins, urging her forward. She dashed towards the school, the once familiar building now looming like a haunted castle. The doors remained tightly shut, but one window in the back flickered with light. Hope pierced through her fear. Maybe he was there, but as she approached, her gut twisted. She heard laughter, a low, sinister sound that sent chills crawling over her skin. It echoed off the walls, mingling with her dread. The laughter didn't belong to children. What's really going on? Rachel thought as dread filled her with every step. Was it a trap? Who or what awaited her within those walls? She pressed closer, feeling the dark blot of the night pull her in, the laughter dancing mockingly in her ears. Before she could second-guess herself, the school's door swung open, revealing nothing but darkness. What lay behind? As she stepped forward, an icy hand grasped her shoulder. A voice hissed close to her ear, "You shouldn't have come here." Rachel froze, her heart hammering in her chest, the cold grip around her shoulder almost paralyzing. She felt the heat of rage flare. This was no time to be afraid. She spun around, ready to confront whatever nightmare awaited. The figure before her was cloaked in shadows, their face obscured. "Who are you?" Rachel managed to choke out, her voice trembling yet defiant. "Where's Ethan?" The figure leaned closer, revealing a hint of a smile that never reached their eyes. "You're too late," they whispered, sending a chill down her spine. Before she could respond, the school's lights abruptly flickered on, brightening the darkened hallway. Instantly, Rachel was blinded by the light. She shielded her eyes, but as they adjusted, she realized the figure was gone. She hesitated for a moment, the panic surging back, igniting her need to find Ethan. "Ethan!" she shouted again, her voice echoing through the empty corridors. Silence answered her. Rachel pushed forward, compelled by the echo of her son's voice still reverberating in her mind. The hallways twisted like a maze, lockers lining the walls with their painted surfaces dulled by years of neglect. She could hear her own breath, rapid and shallow, drowned by the distant laughter that now felt more ominous than ever. "Mom," the voice was muffled, faint, but unmistakably Ethan's. The sound pulled her toward the gymnasium, its doors slightly ajar. She pushed through, breathless. Inside, it was chaos. Chairs were overturned, and papers fluttered like trapped butterflies. The gym was shrouded in shadows, but one corner was illuminated by a single flickering bulb. And there, huddled beneath a basketball hoop, was Ethan. Ethan! Rachel rushed toward him, but as she drew near, her heart dropped. He was not alone. A group of children, some younger than Ethan, others about his age, were gathered around him, their faces pale, wide-eyed with fear. They looked up at her as she entered, their expressions locked between terror and disbelief. "What is going on? Are you okay?" Rachel knelt beside Ethan, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead, scanning for any signs of injury. "Mom, they won't let us leave," he stammered, voice shaky. "They said we have to stay. They're watching us." Rachel's stomach twisted. "Who's watching? What do you mean?" Before Ethan could answer, a loud bang erupted from the gym's entrance, rattling the doors. It swung open violently, creaking as something heavy pushed against it. Rachel instinctively pushed Ethan behind her, legs trembling. "Stay back!" she shouted, squaring her shoulders as the darkness spilled in like a rising tide. The figure she had encountered earlier appeared, silhouetted against the exit lights. "You won't escape this," they snarled, their voice twisted with malice. The children shrank away, but Rachel held her ground, fear morphing into roiling anger. "Why are you doing this?" But her words fell into the void, swallowed by the laughter now spilling from the figure's lips, a horrific sound, layered with malevolence. Suddenly, the gym lights blinked out, plunging them into darkness. Screams erupted, chaos reignited. Rachel felt Ethan tugging at her sleeve, and she gripped his hand tight. "Follow me," she shouted over the clamor, dragging Ethan and the others toward the back exit. But the laughter echoed all around them, menacing and relentless, as if the very walls were laughing at her desperation. As they stumbled into the hallway, Rachel stopped short. Another figure stood at the exit, blocking their escape. "You think you can run?" it rasped. Hope dimmed. Who was this? What more awaited them in this web of terror? Rachel squeezed Ethan's hand tighter. With every ounce of courage, she took a step forward, ready to fight. "We're getting out of here," she said fiercely, but fear gnawed at her mind. Then a door slammed somewhere in the building, and the echo resonated ominously. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just them. They weren't alone, but who else lurked in the shadows? The question loomed as the laughing slowly faded, replaced by heavy, deliberate footsteps. And that question clawed at her gut as she readied herself for an unknown terror. What had she walked into, and would they ever see daylight again? The darkness swallowed them whole, a suffocating blanket that filled the air with a chill that wasn't just from the lack of light. Rachel's heart raced, each beat echoing in her ears, accompanied by the soft whimpering of the other children. She strained to discern any movement in the oppressive void, her mind racing through frantic thoughts. The footsteps grew louder, like thunder rolling in from far away, each step resonating with malice. Rachel tightened her grip on Ethan's small hand, focusing on his warmth as if it were her lifeline. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice barely above a tremor, "we'll find a way out." But uncertainty clawed at her insides. "Where are they?" a child exclaimed, breaking the silence. "I can't see anything." Panic rippled through them, voices rising in fear, a chorus of dread that made Rachel's skin crawl. Rachel hissed, trying to maintain some semblance of control. "We need to be quiet." But the shadows around them seemed to answer, flickering with unseen figures. A low chuckle echoed, sending chills down her spine, mixing with the soft cries of the children. It was everywhere, reverberating off the walls, filling the space with the promise of torment. You think hiding will save you? A voice taunted, its origin indiscernible, a whisper laced with honey and knives. You're trapped just like the others. Others? Ethan quivered beside her, pulling closer. His eyes were wide, tears glistening in the scant light that struggled to seep through the cracks. The laughter intensified, then faded as if the speaker had slipped further into shadows. Rachel swallowed hard, adrenaline coursing through her as she scanned the darkness around. We need to move, she decided, leading the group slowly backward, away from the towering presence at the exit. Just then, her foot kicked something hard and cold. She bent to see what it was: a dusty basketball. In the gloom, her mind raced, throwing it might buy them a second to escape. She reached down to grab it, her fingers trembling. Mom, no. Ethan pleaded, sensing her intentions. Trust me, Rachel breathed, forcing a brave face as she gripped the ball. In one swift motion, she hurled it toward the far wall, the hard thud echoing loudly, sending a jolt through the others. For a moment, the laughter stopped. It's just a game, Rachel. You can't win, the voice crooned from nowhere, but closer now. Rachel held her breath, eyes darting, listening for any movement. She could feel the panic rise around her, coating her throat like ash. We need to keep moving, she started, but a shadow shifted nearby, almost imperceptibly. Where will you run? The voice taunted, the shadows condensing into a thicker mass. It felt like they were being hunted, racing against the uncertainty. Rachel led the way into a narrow hallway, the faint flicker of emergency lights casting a sickly glow against peeling paint. Running faster now, she could feel every heartbeat, every whisper of air tightening her chest. The only sound cutting through the tension was their pounding, echoed by soft sobs behind her. A door burst open to her left, no time to think. In here! She shouted, pushing through the door just as she heard the footfalls grow louder behind them. They tumbled into the room, slamming the door shut. Rachel turned the lock, panting as she listened. The silence draped over them, thick and apprehensive. Are we safe? Ethan asked, his eyes searching hers, begging for assurance she couldn't give. For a long moment, they stood still, hearts racing, listening. Then, the scraping sound began at the door, methodical and slow, chilling her to the bone. Something was trying to get in. Rachel's breath hitched, eyes wide as she backed away. Ethan, we need to find a way out of here, now. But before she could say another word, a voice came from the other side, whispering her name, twisted with laughter. Rachel let us in. The weight of dread settled in her stomach. Who were these figures? What darkness had consumed the school? The answers loomed just out of reach, shadows haunting the corners of her mind, a ceaseless nightmare without end. As she considered their escape options, the door rattled violently. Rachel felt herself growing colder, trapped in this unyielding darkness. And just as the door buckled inward, she whispered to herself, "We'll find a way." Then, the door burst open, and the laughter echoed like thunder, shaking the very ground beneath them. What awaited them on the other side? The door cracked open, splintering wood, protesting against the force behind it. The children shrieked in unison, a wave of sheer terror washing over them as they pressed against the far wall. Rachel moved instinctively to shield Ethan, her back hunched protectively over him. The world outside this fragile sanctuary was hell, and she could feel it filtering in. A cold wind swept into the room, sending a shiver down her spine. Through the gaping door, she could see the first of the shadows crawl in wretched forms, oscillating between reality and nightmares. Clawed fingers stretched out, beckoning with sinister grace, drawn by their panic. Rachel, what do we do? Ethan's voice quivered, laden with fear that resonated deeply within her. We run, she whispered, gathering her resolve. In a frantic rush, Rachel scanned the room, bookshelves lining the walls, a large table cluttered with forgotten projects. She nudged Ethan toward the nearest window, covered in dust and grime. They could climb out. Freedom beckoned. But first, she had to distract whatever horror was looming just beyond the threshold. On three, we run for that window. She breathed, her voice steady despite the rising tide of dread. 1, 2, 3. They sprinted for the window, but a sinister giggle echoed, freezing Rachel mid-motion. You think escaping is an option? The voice slithered through the air, wrapping around them, heavy and suffocating. You're so naive. Rachel's heart thumped violently as she tore her gaze from the shadows. The whispers blended together, a haunting melody of torment. We won't let you leave. The doorframe quivered, the shadows writhing and multiplying, stretching their elongated limbs toward her and Ethan, an ominous wave of darkness. No! She shouted, grabbing Ethan's hand, pulling him away from the door. They darted toward the other side of the room, adrenaline igniting their flight instinct. A crash sounded behind them as the shelves toppled, books scattering like fallen leaves. The room shifted, each shadow extending hungrily, an escape denied at every turn. Where do we go? Ethan's voice cracked with desperation. Look! Rachel pointed to a side door, faint and hidden behind a curtain of dust. That way. They rushed toward it, but even as they moved, Rachel could feel the presence closing in on them. She pushed the door, praying it wouldn't be locked. To her relief, it swung open, revealing more darkness. Stay close. She urged, dragging Ethan inside. The air was thick, almost suffocating, yet she stepped forward, guided only by instinct and a flicker of hope. A moment passed, and silence enveloped them. Heartbeats echoed loudly in the stillness. Rachel leaned against the wall, breathless, finally assessing their surroundings, a cramped hall, littered with debris, dim light filtering through grimy windows from the other side. Where are we? Ethan asked, straining to see. I don't know, she admitted, the panic creeping back in. But we need to keep moving. Suddenly, a loud thud resounded from behind the door they had just passed through, shaking the very ground beneath them. A voice hissed, taunting, relentless. You can't hide forever. Rachel grabbed Ethan's hand, her heart racing again. We'll find a way. But as they crept down the hallway, the air grew colder, the shadows deeper, and soon they found themselves at an intersection. Each path stretched into bleak uncertainty, the weight of the growing darkness pressing heavily on her chest. Which way would lead them out? And then, a soft whisper cut through the air, chilling her to the bone. This way, come and play. Rachel froze, heart pounding, the ominous call sliding under her skin. The voice was beckoning them, tempting her to follow it into unimaginable horrors. Something ominous loomed, waiting for their choice, their decision. Would they dare take a step into the unknown? Or would they remain trapped in their living nightmare? The chill deepened, slithering through Rachel's bones. She hesitated, weighing the dreadful options before them. The whisper beckoned with a twisted promise, an unholy invitation to a world beyond the veil of shadows. Ethan's grip was tight, his fingers trembling as he looked up at her imploringly. Fear gripped her heart like a vice, but the terror of remaining idle felt equally suffocating. Which way? Ethan's voice broke through her thoughts, barely a whisper. Rachel inhaled sharply. We can't just stand here. Do we really have to follow the voice? He asked, his eyes wide, pleading. The darkness pulsed as if alive, and another soft chuckle echoed through the air, palpable with malice. Come on, sweet children. There's so much fun to be had. She stared down the other paths, one dark and narrow, the other wide and suffocated by darkness. But that whisper, it felt like a noose around her heart. Let us try the other way, Rachel said with forced determination, pulling Ethan toward the smaller passage. They needed to find whatever light flickered within this nightmare. As they moved, the shadows clawed at them, but she pushed forward, her pulse racing with every step. The narrow corridor seemed to shrink, walls closing around them as if the house itself wished to swallow them whole. Rachel, I don't like this. Ethan whimpered. We'll be okay, she said, the lie tasting bitter on her tongue. Just then, the air shifted, thickening with a clammy presence. A low growl rumbled through the hall, vibrating against the walls. The whispers faded, but the laughter remained, echoing from every corner, a reminder of torment. Ethan stumbled suddenly, his foot catching on something. Rachel turned quickly, nearly dragging him back up. "What is it?" "Something on the floor," he gasped, eyes widening in horror. She bent down to see what he was pointing at. A rotting piece of flesh lay there, a pale finger missing a digit. It twitched slightly, as if it wanted to curl into a fist. Rachel recoiled, her stomach knotting in disgust. "We need to go." She pulled Ethan away, fear overloading her senses. They resumed their flight, the faint sound of rapid breathing filling the silence. Was that hers or something else? In a frantic dash, they turned a corner and strode into another room. This one felt larger, almost cavernous, devoid of furniture, only dust and memories swirling in the oppressive air. Rachel surveyed her surroundings desperately, her breath catching in her throat. Then, a glint of light caught her eye. It flickered from the far corner. Hope. Maybe an escape route? "Ethan, look." She pointed, but hesitation clouded her mind. "Wait, it's too quiet." A sinking feeling pooled in her gut. With every step they took toward the light, the shadows transitioned, curling around their legs like serpents. "Stay behind me," Rachel whispered fiercely, pushing fear to the back of her mind. As they approached, the flicker intensified, morphing into a steady glow that revealed an ornate mirror standing against the wall, dust swirling around its edges like trapped souls. "What is that?" Ethan's voice quaked, eyes locked on the mirror. Before Rachel could respond, darkness consumed the edges of her vision. The air resonated with echoes, whispers from the past cascading over them. "Do you want to play with us?" The reflection in the mirror twisted, showing figures of children smiling, their eyes wide, gleaming with inhuman delight. Shadows jutted toward the glass, whispering and beckoning. Rachel felt herself drawn in, almost entranced. "No. We can't." She gasped, yanking Ethan back. But it was too late. The mirror rippled, and an icy hand shot through the surface, gripping her wrist. Rachel shrieked as the darkness surged, pulling them towards the glass prison. "Come and play," the voices in unison sang, insistent and hungry. Ethan cried out as she fought against the grip that tightened around her. Would they be lost within the mirror forever? In that chilling moment, Rachel realized they weren't just running from shadows, they were toying with something far more sinister. "Ethan, we have to break free," she shouted desperately, battling against whatever force that sought to claim them. As the world around them distorted, reality warped, and just when she thought all was lost, the room shattered into brilliant fragments, leaving a lingering question echoing in the air: what lay beyond the mirror, and would they ever escape its sinister grasp? A blinding flash engulfed them, illuminating the cavernous space for just a heartbeat before everything crumbled into darkness. Rachel felt her feet leave the ground as panic wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. The chill of the mirror's icy grip evaporated, but something else pressed against her mind, an invisible weight smothering her thoughts. "Rachel." The voice was distant, frantic, then suddenly too close. She blinked, disoriented. Wasn't she just? Ethan's terrified face emerged from the shadows. He stumbled toward her through the haze of uncertainty, but Rachel felt the cold panic pulse through the air, a living thing. They had somehow escaped the mirror, yet the house felt wrong off. As if it all lay twisted beyond recognition. "Where are we?" Ethan's voice cracked, and Rachel turned to survey their surroundings. They stood in what appeared to be a classroom, the walls lined with chalkboards covered in strange symbols and erratic scribbles. Desks were overturned, the room strewn with unearthed lessons. A wind rattled through broken windows, whispering secrets she couldn't understand. "There's something wrong here," she murmured, her gaze darting around the room. The darkness clung to the corners, shifting, whispering. As Rachel moved deeper into the room, her heart throbbed loudly in her ears. Old textbooks lay open on the floor, pages flipping like trapped birds. One book caught her eye, its title faded and barely legible, Children's Games of the Damned. She fought the urge to vomit as she bent down to inspect it. What twisted games had been played here? Ethan stepped cautiously behind her, his breath unsteady. Maybe we should go back, he suggested, glancing toward the broken door they had entered through. Back? The word felt heavy, as though it filled the room with its dread. And go where? We didn't escape, we just entered another nightmare. The air thickened again, more oppressive than before. From within the shadows hung that same twisted laughter, winding through the air. It whispered nonsensical things memories twisted to torment them. Come on, sweet children. The voice coiled around them, its cold breath crawling down their spines. Don't you want to play? Rachel felt the chill escalate, crawling up her arms. We need to find a way out, she urged, scanning for a window amid the darkness. Suddenly, a deafening crash echoed behind them, reverberating through the walls. Rachel spun around just in time to see the wall split, revealing a tunnel slathered in gray and an acrid scent that burned her nostrils. Get back! Ethan shouted, pulling her away from the opening. Run? She hesitated, that same dread clenching her heart. What if it's just another trap? I don't know. He pleaded, voice trembling. But we can't just stand here. The laughter grew more pronounced, a cacophony of childish delight blending with the nightmare as though the house itself mocked them. The darkness pulsed, alive and hungry. Rachel's mind raced. If we go down that tunnel we need to be ready for anything. I'm not ready for anything. Ethan whimpered, the fear twisting visibly on his face. Neither am I, but staying here will only get us. Her breath caught as a flash of motion caught her eye. Shadows flitted across the room, twisting into shapes, writhing closer. Rachel held her breath, steel determination sharpening her thoughts. Let us get out. She screamed suddenly, grabbing Ethan's hand and pulling him toward the opening. The moment they stepped into the tunnel, it was like stepping into a living nightmare, the passage constricting around them as screams of laughter echoed from behind. The echoes of shadows roared in pursuit, threatening to swallow them whole. As they dashed forward, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching them, a presence lingering just beyond the edge of the darkness. Would they ever escape this entrapment? They flew deeper into the tunnel, running from the torment of familiar laughter, a sound tainted with anguish. The way ahead twisted and churned, impossibly vast yet suffocatingly close. Just as it began to feel hopeless, a distant light flickered ahead. Hope ignited within her chest, pushing her to sprint faster toward it. But as they reached the luminescence, Rachel hesitated, dread gripping her like ice. Emerging into another room, questions filled her mind. Would this light save them or drag them deeper into hell? Ethan, wait! But he didn't stop, and the moment he crossed the threshold, the light flickered violently, dimming until only shadow remained, beckoning with a sickening promise. Would it consume them next? In that devastating instant, Rachel understood. This was only the beginning. Ethan vanished into the void beyond the light, his silhouette swallowed whole by shadowy tendrils that coiled like serpents. Panic surged through Rachel, sending her heart racing. Ethan! She screamed, her voice echoed back to her, twisted and mocking. The room was isolation, each moment stretching endlessly as she stood alone, gripping the threshold, torn between fear and desperation. The laughter swirled around her, a ghastly symphony of sadistic glee. She hesitated, feeling the darkness pulse with sinister intent, the air thickening as if it were alive. Shadows danced, chittering softly, teasing her in a grotesque mockery of childhood games. A flicker of movement caught her eye, a shape darting just at the edge of the darkness, taunting her. Ethan! She shouted again, her voice curling around the gloom. Every moment she waited, the feeling of fingertips grazing her skin intensified, a sensation creeping closer while stealing her breath away. Time was dissipating, and the shadows were closing in. With determination swelling in her chest, she took a step into the light, feeling the cool, sickly glow wash over her. The moment she crossed the threshold, the room twisted, reshaping itself in a violent surge. The comforting light vanished, replaced by a desolate playground, devoid of color, filled with rusted swings and shattered slides. Echoes of children's laughter bounced off empty walls, the kind that sent a cold shiver slithering down her spine. "Ethan!" She cried out again, scanning the lifeless yard, her stomach knotting with dread. The air felt heavier here, electric, charged with a malevolent energy that pulled at her. The laughter warped into something sinister, filled with malice as whispers entwined around her, ensnaring her thoughts. "Come play." An overwhelming urge to flee surged through her veins, and she stumbled toward the far edge of the playground, inches away from a fence slathered in vines, bending like long fingers reaching toward her. Dark clouds swirled above, casting deep shadows that flickered ominously. An old merry-go-round lay at the center, spinning slowly, even though there was no wind. Rachel's eyes fixed on it, a mix of terror and fascination washing over her. The laughter rose, echoing her thoughts, a chaotic melody that resonated with memories. When did they turn rotten? Just as she dared to step closer, she felt it, the sensation of clawing hands grasping at her, icy and desperate. Rachel turned, heart pounding against her ribcage. She couldn't see them but felt them closing in, the air pregnant with anticipation. "Ethan!" Her voice cracked, the urgency burning inside her. Beyond the playground, the darkness shifted, and suddenly, he emerged, wild-eyed and breathless. Relief flooded her, but it was fleeting as she noticed he was not alone. Something shadowy trailed behind him, slick and serpentine, not a part of him yet undeniably tethered. "Rachel, we have to go." His voice was strained, pulling her back into a nightmare. Panic wrapped around them like a noose. "What is that?" Her gaze shot to the shadow, now shifting, writhing with an eagerness that made her stomach churn. It surged toward them, hungry and relentless. "I don't know." He panted, his fear palpable. "It won't let us leave." As Rachel's pulse raced, the shadows began to pulsate in sync with her heartbeat, closing in, waiting for the moment of weakness. "We need to get out. Now." The merry-go-round began to spin faster, pulling her in like a magnet. Hand in hand, they surged toward the edge of the playground, but the darkness clawed at their heels, whispers taunting their every step. Faster, they raced to the fence, but dread seeped into their hearts when they realized it was a wall of shadows, solid and suffocating. As they slammed against it, an ear-piercing cackle erupted from the darkness, curdling the air with dread. "You're mine now, sweet children," Ethan faltered, his grip slipping, and the shadows wrapped around his feet, dragging him backward. "No!" "Ethan!" Panic enveloped Rachel, her world collapsing into chaos. She felt the darkness brush against her, the chilling whispers calling for her to submit. "Rachel!" His voice cut through the laughter, and she felt a fire ignite in her, a desperate resolve. "You have to go." But could she abandon him? The shadows streamed closer, their laughter consuming her thoughts. With one last surge, Rachel turned, breaking free from the grip of despair. She bolted past the spinning merry-go-round, feeling the warmth of resolve fueling her escape. Yet as she sprinted towards the edge, she couldn't help but glance back one last time. Ethan was struggling, his face a mask of terror, and then nothing. Just laughter in the dark. Rachel's heart plummeted, dread wrapping around her throat. Every echo now felt twisted, mocking her choice as she fled toward the unknown. What awaited her beyond the shadows? Would she find freedom, or would she awaken a darkness even more sinister than before? Rachel dashed through the empty playground, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The laughter held a cruel edge, echoing back from the darkness like a childhood nightmare reawakened. Each step felt heavier, as if the shadowy tendrils were clawing at her ankles, eager to pull her into their suffocating embrace. She pushed on, heart racing, but the laughter morphed into something more sinister, sibilant whispers that coiled around her thoughts, trying to draw her back. "Ethan!" She shouted again, desperation clawing at her throat. The playground loomed larger, more menacing, as though it were shifting to trap her in its twisted geometry. The swings creaked in the stillness, a ghostly reminder of lives once lived, now obscured by the pervasive darkness. She could feel its breath behind her, sour and stale, but the shadows danced just out of her sight, never quite revealing their form. She stumbled to a stop, mind racing to comprehend the grotesque reality. Behind her, the darkness reverberated, pulsating with angry energy. What had chased Ethan? What terror had he unleashed? The air thickened around her as if to suffocate her hope. Just as fear began to take root, a flicker of movement caught her eye again. There, darting between the shadows, was a small figure, no taller than her knee. "Help!" Rachel cried, but the figure melted back into the shadows, vanishing as easily as smoke. A chill dripped down her spine. Could it be another lost soul, one more trapped by this wretched place? She pressed on, adrenaline mixing with dread, urging her to find something, anything that could lead her to Ethan. As she reached the edge of the playground, the vines on the fence seemed to writhe more violently, encasing the wood in a beckoning embrace. No! Not again! She thought, the panic spurring her back far from its grasp. The laughter intensified, tumbling over itself as if it hungered for her sweat and terror. With trembling hands, she reached out toward the fence. Despite her fear, there was a pull in her chest, an irresistible draw towards the looming darkness beyond. The ground beneath her feet trembled almost imperceptibly, a heartbeat, syncing with the thrum of the shadows. Suddenly, a vision crashed into her mind, Ethan's panicked face, his eyes wide with horror as the darkness engulfed him. She could not let that be the last image she held of him. Fueled by fierce determination, Rachel twisted away from the shadows, targeting the cracked asphalt leading to the path out of this living maze. "Ethan! I'm coming!" she yelled, the urgency making her voice break. But as she turned, the landscape buckled. The playground twisted, the swings began to sway violently, far beyond the influence of wind. Each creak added to the cacophony, drowning out her thoughts. Shapes began to form in the black, looming figures with grotesque smiles that stretched too far across their faces. Rachel stumbled back, horror frozen in her veins. One figure broke free from the shadows. It was a child, laughing with joy as it sprinted towards her, dark braids trailing behind. She knew this entity wasn't human. It was another errant spirit, cast aside and damned, much like Ethan. "Come play." The figure beckoned, voice sweet yet dripping with malice. "We can have so much fun." "No!" Rachel shrieked, instinctively recoiling. The laughter of the dark figures intensified, weaving into an unholy choir. The energy pulsed through her, filled with sickening promise. She could feel the shadows clawing at her, urging her to join them. More figures emerged, all childlike and laughing, their voices buoyant in the oppressive air. They swirled around her, drawing her into their embrace, taunting her with promises of acceptance, of love. "No!" she screamed, the power of the shadows pushing against her will. She had to believe Ethan was still there, that he was fighting too. Rachel's heart pounded, thoughts racing as she spun away from the phantoms. She couldn't succumb. But where was she to run? The playground had morphed into an ever-tightening trap, whispering assurances that peace lay within its thrall. Just then, a sudden burst of energy surged through her, a glimpse of bravery igniting deep within. She rushed forward into their midst, as the echoes of laughter grew cacophonous, drowning out her cries. "Ethan!" she screamed, and the world around her rippled like a mirage. This wasn't the end. Not yet. As she plunged deeper into darkness, she wondered, would the madness in pursuit of rescue consume her too? Would she find Ethan, or succumb to the lure of dark laughter forever? With that thought settling like ice in her gut, she plunged deeper into the heart of chaos, a flickering hope for salvation illuminating her way. Or was it just an illusion? Rachel plunged deeper into the black chaos, and an echo of hope pulled her forward. Her breath hitched as she sprinted through the thickening shadows, sharp whispers coiling around her, threatening to drown her in their seductive grasp. Each step resonated with desperation, a drumbeat of resolve to find Ethan. "Ethan!" she shouted again, her voice ricocheting against the oppressive walls. The laughter erupted around her, a hollow mockery filling the air, but she pressed on, her heart pulling her through the darkness. The laughter twisted, sharper now, a sinister promise that threatened to gnaw at her sanity, but she refused to yield to the growing despair. Suddenly, a flicker caught her eye. Ethan, barely discernible, darting through the shadows, his small figure seemingly entranced. "Ethan!" She screamed, forcing her legs to push harder, a fire igniting in her chest as she pushed through the shifting darkness. He turned, eyes wide with terror, and for a heartbeat, she thought she could reach him. "Mom!" His voice cracked against the cacophony, pulling her forward like a lifeline. But as she lunged, the shadows wrapped around him, pulling him toward a swirling vortex just beyond their reach. Horror clawed at her. "No! Ethan!" Rachel shouted, pain squeezing her heart, but she kept charging. The darkness writhed like a living thing, pulling and twisting, mocking her with its grasp. "What are you waiting for?" A whisper spat from the shadows, hissing like steam. "Release him. You can join him." The figure's voice lingered, each word dripped with sickly sweetness, slithering into Rachel's thoughts. "Never!" She screamed defiantly, fueling her refusal with images of Ethan, his laughter, his smile. She couldn't lose him. With every ounce of strength, she barreled forward, the whispers trying to drag her down. She reached for him, but each second felt like an eternity, the darkness thrumming with power. "Join us. You can play forever." The laughter threatened to break her resolve, tempting memories of a simpler time crawling into the forefront of her mind. "No. I refuse," she thundered, clenching her fists. Dread threatened to swallow her whole, but she pushed the fear aside, focusing on Ethan's bright smile shining through the shadows. "Fight it, Ethan. Come to me." She stretched out her arm, surging toward him with fury, desperation and love radiating between them. The shadows recoiled momentarily, surprise flickering through the darkness like a candle flame. "I want to let you go," she cried, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Just as if they heard the truth in her words, the shadowy figures began to writhe, displeased and enraged. Ethan's terrified eyes locked onto hers, a glimmer of recognition breaking through. In that instant, he pulled back, resisting the shadows that held him tight. "I'm coming," he shouted, his small frame wavering as he pressed against their grip. But the darkness howled, a sinister wind swirling around them. The laughter died down, replaced by a low growl. "Foolish child," they hissed. "You cannot escape. Together, Ethan. Remember our promise. I will always come for you." Rachel felt the ground shake under her feet, the shadows swirling in rage, unable to conquer the bond of their love. They weakened under her conviction, and she charged forward, adrenaline turning her fear into raw power. As the darkness faltered, Ethan broke free, racing forward. "Mom!" he screamed, breathless and shining bright against the void. She grabbed him just as the darkness roared, the shadows twisting around them, screaming in fury. They held on tightly, together, they faced the swirling chaos. "Run!" Rachel yelled, dragging him to the exit that seemed to pulse with blinding light. "Keep going." They dashed through the thickening shadows, a storm of fraying energy clashed around them, the echoes of laughter fading into the distance. With each step closer to the exit, the light grew, illuminating their path and engulfing them in warmth, pushing the darkness back. The oppressive weight of despair evaporated with each stride. "We're almost there," she urged, pushing past the shadows clawing at their heels. In a final surge, they catapulted toward the light, and as they crossed the threshold, the world peeled away behind them, leaving only sanctuary. They stumbled out into a patch of moonlit grass, gasping for air, hearts racing, the evil night now behind them. Rachel pulled Ethan close, relief flooding through her veins, the warmth of safety enveloping them in a fierce embrace. "We did it!" Ethan gasped, eyes wide with wonder but still holding the weight of their ordeal. "Yes, my love. We did," Rachel whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. The shadows of the night dissipated behind them, leaving Maplewood bathed in moonlight, tranquil and serene once more. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, but their hearts would carry the scars, the memories of what could have been. Hand in hand, they took their first steps back into the light, a powerful bond forged in fear yet illuminated by love. And as the dawn broke, Rachel knew she would always fight for Ethan, her son, her light in the shadowed world, but as they walked on, a chilling whisper floated through the breeze, "You escaped this time, but we're always here." Rachel's heart tightened, instincts compelling her to protect Ethan. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Believe in your light, she thought fiercely. It would guide them through whatever lay ahead. If you enjoyed this story, you need to subscribe now so you don't miss our next exclusive tales filled with thrilling twists. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and keep our community thriving. Flood the comments with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about what happens next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this heart-pounding conclusion. Your support means everything. Show everyone you're a true fan.